That's obviously not the Canadian Rockies, that's Mexico. Next. What's that?
Arizona.
All right, there's only one place in the world that those cactus grow. Next. And that, who rakes their dirt? Japan, right, okay. So then we hit Africa. Look at the skyline on that. Keep going. And, yep.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Here you go, Mark. Just
Oh,
have a
there you
seat.
go, yeah.
Have a seat.
Good job. Keep going. We had some beautiful shots one morning. It was totally misty when we went on a safari. Keep going.
You want it big like that?
Yeah, that's good. Don't get trees like that in Canada. Keep going. No, just keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Or like that. And then we hit Zambia, which has a little bit different skyline because it's got different trees. One more. Because they got these trees that giraffes eat, and they don't grow in Zambia. So the next picture, just before I left, I thought I'd better look up where I was going. Elaine did all the arrangements, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't even know where I'm going. So as you can see, there's Zambia's in the middle, and it's actually quite large. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it became a country in 1964, and it's got 17.5 million people, of which 10 million live in the city of Lusaka. And this land area is 752,000 square kilometers. And right below it is Zimbabwe, which is almost half its size. It's only 390,000 square kilometers, and there's 16.5 million people. Next slide. And this is all of, let me just use this for a sec. This is really cool. I've been on every major road. There's Lusaka. We had to go on this east road to Shangwe. It's East Road, or was it West Road? It's the East Road. And we went on the West Road all the way over here. That's where we went for our safari. And this is the North Road, the Death Highway. Yeah, basically. And we went all the way up to there, which is where we stayed when we worked in the village. And then we went all the way down the South Road, all the way down to here, which no longer, you can't see it, but that's Victoria Falls. It doesn't look that big on the map, but when you see the potholes, you'll know what I mean. It takes a while. All right, next picture. We arrived on Tuesday, and this is Philip, who was our taxi driver. We just hired him for the 2 weeks. This is Elaine's cousin married his cousin, so that makes them kissing cousins, right? I don't know. Okay, so the next day, these are red cappuccinos. Starbucks has them now, but they're making them out of a powder with a ton of sugar. I'm experimenting. That's a cappuccino made out of rooibos tea. It is very good. All right, the next day we met up with Nisama Keomo, and we went fabric shopping. Next shot. Yeah, that was, but it's all up there, and after 10 minutes, your neck gets kind of sore. All right, then we went to visit them at their house, and they're selling, there's these little barbecues you see in the front center, and they're barbecuing corn. And so I thought, oh, let's have a barbecue corn. Oh, for crying out loud, that's not our nice, soft, sweet corn. That was like, maybe that's what started this. My face blew up this week, and I had to have a wisdom tooth pulled. So that's okay, I took drugs before this so I can make it through. And this is a picture of Nisama, but I was actually trying to get a picture of that humongous spider. That's kind of crazy. Oops. Yeah. I was going to say, I met Nisama, go back one picture, and she had no hair. Did any of you guys see that movie, the Black Panther?
Oh, Black Panther.
Okay, and like half those women have no hair, and you think that's insane. And then you get to Africa, and half the women don't have hair because it's just too hot. So they shave it off, and then they wear wigs when they get dressed up. So I met her, and she had very short hair. And then when we were at the retreat 2 weeks later in Zimbabwe, she comes up, she goes, Christine, and she gives me a big hug, and I'm going, yeah, who are you? Because she had hair down here. She goes, you don't recognize me, do you? And then the voice clicked in, and I thought, oh, yeah. See, so anybody can wear a wig. Next picture, even Elaine. It's really funny because when my daughter was in Japan, she said North Americans recognize people first by their hair, And when you get there and they change their hairstyles like that, it's like, huh. So, and every place else, because like in Japan, everybody has the exact same hair, and pretty well in Africa too. You learn to look at their faces and recognize their features. So.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, who was that? Right. All right, so next slide. Nisama has a little school. It's a school of interior design, and she also sews for interior design. She has customers. And I forgot, we've never took any pictures of their house. I totally forgot about that. But anyways, while we were there, someone stole their pump. I asked to use the washroom, and she goes, okay, but there's a pail of water next to the toilet. And so this is how water works. Go to the next slide. You see those towers up top there? This is in the city, and they have city water, but it doesn't matter. They have to pump all the water up to these towers, and then gravity is what brings it down and makes your water run. Now, take a next shot. You see that there's one water tank in the front, and in the back you can see two, so that's probably a little hotel. So what happens is they bring the water down to the next level. When I do this, there. See this? This is out in the country. That's how they heat the water, right? They bring it down to that level, build a fire underneath it, and heat the water. But when you want hot water, there's not much gravitational force left. So you kind of have to run around in the shower trying to find that little trickle of hot water that comes out. And it takes like 10, 15 minutes for the hot water to get to the shower. So it's like, oh, I have really been enjoying my showers for the last weeks. Yeah, so anyways, somebody stole their water pump. And what they do is they dug a well, and they installed the pump, and they covered the whole thing with dirt and planted corn on it. Okay? And 5 months later, somebody stole that pump. So it has to be somebody who knew where the well was dug, knew where the pump was installed. So even though, like, Zambia is considered 95% Christian, stealing is a way of life there. It's just insane. So I don't know, how many of you women would like to wash, do laundry, clean your house without running water? Right, so Elaine and I discussed it, and like it costs $500 US to buy a new pump. So of the money that you guys gave us, we gave them $500 US. So listen, we kind of just gave it to them in the card and disappeared.
Who did you give the money to?
Oh, it's Nisama and Kalanguli Keola.
Kalanguli,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So a few days later, and we gave them this card at church on Sunday, and we didn't get this till like 2 days later. So we're just assuming that they didn't open the card.
Yeah.
Right? So when they did, this is what we got. Dear Elaine and Christine, Nisama and I are overwhelmed by your expression of love through the gift you blessed us with yesterday. Yesterday, a day after. We don't have adequate words to fully express how deeply your thoughtfulness has impacted us. All we can say is that we are looking forward to having running water again when we find a right pump. Thank you very much. God bless you both God bless you both in amazing ways as He sees fit. Enjoy your stay in Kakulu.
So we just emailed them the last couple of days and asked how it was going. This is the reply.
This is the reply. Hi, we have not yet installed the pump. We are working on security measures. Last week we had another scary incident. While we were asleep, someone came into the house and walked away with our television and our cell phones sitting in the sitting room. None of us heard anything. Even the dog slept through the incident. There was no break-in. I slept quite late because I work into the early hours of the morning, and the last thing I do is to check the doors and make sure they are locked. All the doors were locked. We are very puzzled how this happened.
Scary, eh?
I responded back with, it's an inside job.
All right, so then the next day we were off to a safari. We went for a 2-day safari, and we arrived at this place, and they said, come in, have a drink, and they're feeding us water and whatever we wanted to drink, and after about 10, 15 minutes, I said, do you not want us to check in? And they said, oh, you two are the only people in the lodge for the next 3 days. So we had this 5-star resort to ourselves. The whole staff was there to cater to us. I tell you, there were so many blessings on this trip. Oh, right. Well, this is what it looks like from across the water. They had a swimming pool, which was like, we spent 5 minutes in the sun and that was it. You were so close to the equator, and I rarely burn, but after 5 minutes I said, uh-oh, I gotta get out of here. The whole main building only has one wall. The rest is open to the elements. That's the eating area. And those are the huts we stayed at. Oh yeah, and then they said, well, since there's only 2 of you, you guys don't even need to share a hut. You can have one of your own. So look at that door.
Wow.
Look at the carving on that door. That's a solid piece of wood. It's incredible. And those were our little mosquito netted beds.
Princess.
And that was our first of African wildlife. It's a really cute little cat. And so we went on 4 safaris. They took us out once on the water, once on the, 3 times on the road. We saw a lot. The weekend that before us, they had a full house and they didn't see a thing. Because it's the rainy season, the animals don't have to come to the river to drink. So yeah, we saw 5 elephants, 13 lions, all kinds of zebras and pukas. This is so cool. These ants, they build this road and then they cover it up into a tunnel so they don't get scorched by the sun. And then we drove over it. And on the last morning, we were trying to get pictures of these Cape buffalo that are really quite shy, and then the best friends of Elaine there, what is it called? Zawa. Zambian agri... Yeah, he says, oh, just go 2 miles down the road. There's a herd of 5,000. So you couldn't even see them because it's the rainy season. The grass is like 6-7 feet high, so it's kind of... Oh, and they see that little bucket in the back? They burn elephant dung to keep the bugs away from us. And the place was surrounded with baboons. Woke up and one morning they were having this huge fight outside our window. And in the middle of the night, we never got to see a hippo out of the water, but you wake up in the middle of the night and you can hear them outside your window going, because they come up out of the water to eat at night. And it was like, I don't want to scare them because I don't know if this hut can withstand a couple hippo charging it. All right, so we went back to Lusaka, and this is our church in Lusaka. That's the inside there. They use those lovely plastic patio chairs. One of the ministers lived there. I think it was Danda. I don't know. Okay. And they have a little area for kids to play, and there's a garden behind the church, and that was the worship leaders. So there's no running, this area where the church is, it's like a huge area that has no running water, but Elaine says, look, the kids are running for water. They do have running water.
Running kids for running water.
So that night, Sunday night, we went to visit Kathy Harding. This is a very interesting lady. She's been living there for over 40 years, right? So her husband died, 30-some years ago? Yeah, and he knew he was dying, whatever he had. So they bought 5 acres close to Lusaka and built a house, and then he died shortly afterwards. But she's a missionary out there for years. She runs they have a place where they send all the lepers, right? And they were really isolated. So she built a village close by so that the relatives of these people could come live close by and see them. And it was really interesting because their roads are washing out and they can't get any help to rebuild it. And so she asked, she asked Elaine to pray before we left her place that night, and Elaine prayed for, some help with this road. And when we went back a week later to see her, she goes, I'm sitting at church on Sunday, and they have what they call prayer and praise. And some guy got up in the back and he said, I just want to give praise and thanks because for 20 years I've been running the school system and God's been really good to me. He says, but now I've been transferred to the roads.
Just by Elaine's prayer.
So we haven't had a chance yet. We sent her an email to see how it was going, and Elaine will read her answer.
So just to fill you in a little bit, Kathy runs this charity by herself. She's originally from England, but the other thing is she's the most amazing networker in the world. Like, you can ask her for anything and she'll know where to get it. And so Gordon, how I first met her was through Gordon because we needed stuff for the village. She says, I'll get in contact with someone. So this 5 acres has stuff constantly being delivered there, and then she just farms it out. She's amazing. And she's like 80, what was
82.
it? 82, 83.
Yeah.
And I asked her when she was going to retire, and she says, no, she'll just work till she dies, and that'll be the end of it. So her daughter has now moved from Australia back here, and she's built a house on this property, and she will take over the ministry when her mom passes away. So one day we'll just get notice. So I sent her a message and said, how is your road going? Now, I've been out to that village, and let me tell you, I was in a 4x4, and it was touch and go. And then one other time, I said, well, why don't we just walk across the road that's full of water and get to the other side, walk a kilometer, and we're there. And she goes, that'd be great, except it's full of crocodiles, but if you want to walk across it, go ahead. I said, it's okay, I'll stay in the truck. So I asked her about the roads, and this is the response we got. Good to hear from you. I've been patiently waiting for your little news of Zimbabwe. Hope to have a little news as time permits. So I have since filled her in. Glad spring is in the air. Here in Zambia, we have only 2 seasons. The rain has just finished about 3 weeks ago. Green, lush bush has turned into the dry, brittle, beige, tall grass, but it is in a blaze of yellow and yellow wild daisies as far as the eye can see. It is all along the highway from Lusaka to the Copper Belt. I have just returned home from 2 hours ago from my first time in the village since December. Why? During the rains, the road flooded in part where the land is lying low. Also, I have continued these past months to knock on doors to have somebody do something about the bad state of our road. Think you know, in desperation, I wrote to our president of Zambia last October. Through this, I believe, I had them from the Ministry of Central Province promising immediate funds for to be available for your road in a priority fashion. I took this with a pinch of salt. I wrote back again and asked, what happens to the billions of kwacha we raise each month for the toll gates? That is something new in Zambia this last 2 years. They have put up toll gates to redo the highways. I've been there now for those 2 years. Not a thing has been done. This is meant for the road maintenance in Zambia. No reply. As you know, Elaine, I have been banging on doors since 2012. And then she just says she has wonderful visitors from the U.S. There, and they are helping her with some ministry things. So I wrote back, and I will give you an update when I hear from her, just asking whatever happened to the guy in church that has been transferred to the roads. Because he did say that he would try and expedite the issue. So
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Expedite in Africa doesn't mean the same thing as it does
No,
here.
it's now, or just now. And,
Yeah, really.
and all 3 of those things mean something very big. So if he said now, that means anywhere between now and 2024.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think we told you that just before we left, a Catholic church in Stony Plain contacted Elaine and said, look, we've been sewing these dresses for 2 years. Can you take them to Africa? Oh. So we stopped at the orphanage where Marion works. That's one of the ladies in the church in Zambia. And that's a picture of the kids. She runs an orphanage and a school. So this is the picture of the kids in their school uniforms. And the next one, there they are in their dresses. So this was in Chongwe. This is where the orphanage was. Okay, so and look at these guys. So they're the bus drivers, and she goes, I can't have them standing around doing nothing all day. So they're mowing the lawn. They mow it with the old-fashioned, the scythe, right? So they started hamming it up when they saw I had my camera out. So you think you have a bad job. Look at these ladies sitting beside the road. They start with these big pile of big rocks, and they hammer it with other rocks till they make smaller rocks until they have sand. And they'll sit there in the hot sun for hours, and sometimes they make a sale once a week.
That's the job, $2
Making sand.
Well, different size rocks for landscaping. And here's another really bad job. These guys walk up and down the traffic in Lusaka. And they've banned most of them, but these guys they sell newspapers and minutes for their phone. Okay, so this is how cell phones work in Africa. I mean, they have cell phones, but they have no electricity to plug them in, so they have the cheap flip phones, and when the power runs out, they go back to the store and they pull their SIM card, and the store gives them a new phone, and they just rotate phones. But in the city, it works a bit differently. These guys do have smartphones, but they never put more than 10 minutes on, because in case somebody steals their phone, so they don't lose a bunch of money. So they're constantly buying these little scratch cards, and it's got a code on it. They scratch it off, put it on their phone, and they have 10 more minutes of cell time. Crazy, eh? And everybody lives behind walls. There's concrete walls around everything, around every home. And that was the trouble with Cullen Gooley's house. They hadn't got around to putting up the wall yet, so they're kind of vulnerable that way. There's another wall, you can see the gates to get in. And that little green thing is a money place. Nobody has bank accounts. And if they get money, they send it to people who need it. And so they give it to these people, and for a small fee, it ends up on the other side of the country to whoever needs it. There's another one at the market.
I was buying 10 minutes, no. Let me explain. I too went to one of those talk time places because my data wasn't working properly and I needed access to my email. So it's funny, I went up there, they pushed one button, they said, there you are. I have no idea what they did, but it worked.
All right, so then we were off to Kukulu, and we stayed in Kapiri. This is the couple that we stayed with. They're Mike and Shane Edwards. Now, they're originally from Zimbabwe, and in 2000, when they kicked out all the white farmers, they didn't lose their farm, but they didn't like the atmosphere. So 2-3 years later, they sold their farm, and then the bank wouldn't give them their money, and they had to take them to court. And with the hyperinflation the way it was, 5 years later, when they got their money, it was worth enough to go out for a cup of coffee. Yeah. And so, she lost her pension. She worked for 25 years as a school teacher in Zimbabwe. That's all gone. So they moved to Zambia in about 2005, and he's had a few odd jobs, but he says, I'm getting old. He's actually 65 right now. Wow. He says, I need to secure our future. So he bought a farm a couple of years ago, and they've become egg farmers. Right now they own 3,000 chickens, and at the end of the year, they want to be up to $500,000. Their kids invested in the farm. One kid lives in Nigeria, and the other one lives in England. And so they went for a bank loan, and that's a long, drawn process, but we just heard that they got it at the really good rate of 30%. Seriously, if you want US dollars, you usually pay between 34 and 35% interest, and if you want Zambian kwacha, they'll only charge you 24% interest. So these guys, they're joking that they have very Christian chickens, because on Sunday mornings they have to leave early to go to church. It's over an hour's drive away, and so all the employees collect the eggs, and the production goes from 94% down to 82% because some of them are Christians and don't lay eggs on Sunday mornings. So, somewhere in that morning, those employees steal 360 eggs. Isn't that crazy? You think the village would be happy that this farm is coming up there and they could get jobs where they could actually make cash money, but I don't know what it is, but Africans don't worry about tomorrow. They just don't plan ahead. And so they always have to hire night watchmen, and some of them turn out to be the worst. When we were staying with these people in Zimbabwe, he loves living there. His wife is from Stony Plain, and he says whatever's going wrong in Zimbabwe is how you can make money. And so one time when they had a gas shortage, he trucked in 10,000 liters of gas. And then he kept track of it. It was going down too fast. So then he installed security cameras and didn't tell his night watchman. And the next day, he looks at them, and here's a night watchman is letting people in with their little trucks and filling up their trucks. And he shows it to the night watchman. He says, "You're stealing my gas." He goes, "Oh, that's not me. That's just someone who looks like me." It's just kind of insane. So last year, Mike hired a bunch, when it's dry and the grass is 6-7 feet tall, it's kind of hard to walk around. So he hired a couple of villagers to come out and mow the lawn. They were supposed to chop it down. And one of them, after one day of work, that was just really a lot of work. So he lit a match. Burnt down half the farm. So fortunately, he says that it went so fast because the grass is dry that the trees were coming back. With the rainy season this year, all the leaves are coming back on the trees. He's got a cashew orchard. But I know it's just insane. All right. So next is our 5-star flat. Oh, this is the house that they're building. It's not done yet, and they had to stop because the rainy seasons were about a month late, and so you see the walls are green. We got a lot of moss growing on it. Everything is built with concrete blocks. You can't use wood because of termites. But I had to take this picture for Gary because look at this scaffold. It's just
creative.
branch. Yeah, and it's like, they really don't have health and safety officers there. And this is a picture of the executive toilet out there right now. Yes, when we were in the village, we would just pop over to the executive. It was a 5-minute drive. All right, so here's our 5-star flat. All houses have these screen doors on them, or they're metal doors, and you lock yourself in at night and lock it when you leave. And some of the big houses actually have one of these in the hallway that separates the living room and kitchens from the sleeping area, so that if people break in, they have another line of defense. It's kind of crazy. And here's the front. There's this big ditch, and when it rains, that must be just full. And that's where they were behind us in another flat, and that's where they were staying. And it came complete with pets. This was Cedric the Cockroach. He was about 2 inches long. This is Baby G the Gecko. We started naming them so we knew what we were talking about. And this was Gerard the Grasshopper. One night we turned off the lights and she was on her tablet and I was on my iPad. And all of a sudden she goes, ah! And I go, what's it? Ah! Because this thing would dive bomb the lights and bounce off on her face. And after a few minutes of this, we said, okay, that's enough.
More screen time.
And oh, look at the size of that millipede. That's my foot. And look at the length of that sucker. Yeah. So we didn't get a picture of Florence. She was a praying mantis about this long.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah. All right, so the next one, that's Pastor Justin's house way back in there. There's a little bit closer. On the left is the house. On the right is his, nobody cooks in their houses. That's a cooking shed or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, their kitchen. And look, like this house is, what can I say? It has no windows. It just has a few bricks missing, and I had a duct to get into it. They built the floor, and then they found a door, and they installed the door, and then they couldn't use it because it was 6 inches lower than the floor, so they chopped the hole in the floor so they could open it halfway.
Chop the door instead.
Yeah, I know. All right, so, and this is the inside. It looks really big, but really that's
TV.
just, yeah, I know, they have a TV. They have no electricity, but they have a TV. and it comes complete with a picture of Elaine on the wall. They must be desperate for decoration.
That's funny.
And in the front of it, there's this little 7-Eleven. And this lady, you can't really see it that well, but on the top of in that window, on the left-hand side, she's got a bucket about this big. She gets up every morning and she makes these kind of like our apple fritters without apple and wheat. It's all corn. And she sells them for 1 kwacha, which is like 10 cents. And she goes to the store and she buys bigger boxes of salt and baking powder and things like that, and then repackages them in little plastic bags, like a tablespoon at a time, because most of the villagers cannot afford to buy a big box. So they come to her and they buy whatever they need at a time. So she's got herself a little business going there. So when we got there, we needed to buy supplies. So we went to the local market, and they probably thought they died and gone to heaven. Look, we spent money. It's just insane there. And see, Elaine takes me to the nicest places, cheapest restaurant. And so they always just sell one thing in their stall, and so you had to go up and down, and there was no running water in the area again. That was the only pump at about a 2-block radius. And then you rent a truck, and we piled this all in a truck, and it really had troubles going through the potholes. So there's the church, and you probably saw some of the pictures there. It's going up. Yes, that was tin. When the church fell down in December, he took all the tin and put it in his house. I have no idea where. We were in that house, and we didn't see it. They must have stacked it. It's corrugated, so they probably just stacked it up against the wall. But somebody would have stolen it if he hadn't hit it. So there's the church going up, the roof, and there's on the outside. And that's siesta time. And they're building a little stage with concrete blocks. And then I was wondering where they were getting the sand from to mix the concrete. So I go around the back of the church, and they'd ran out of sand, so they were just digging a hole in the middle of the road, which was made out of sand.
Now we know why there's potholes.
Yeah, I know. And so here they're pouring the concrete, and can you see that? Oh, still prepping it. That's how they flatten out the concrete with these 2x4s put onto. It's just insane. And those are the men that built it all, and it was ready. They poured the cement on Thursday, and it was dry by Saturday morning. It's hot enough there for that. And there was a minister from Lusaka that came out, and he works with iron. He built them this beautiful pulpit. It's made out of wrought iron and plexiglass. So he's also did the front door, and he's going to go do the windows. And so then we went and bought them some trees. This is an African tulip tree. Can't really see the flowers at the top, but they grow quite big and they're very shady, so they're going to put one on either side of the front door. And then we bought we got orange trees and lemon trees that they're going to plant on either side so that they'll have some fruit. So this is more of these dresses that we gave away, and when these girls were trying this on, they were really bothering the girl on the far left, okay? And I finally went to the pastor. I said, why are they making so much fun of her? And he said, because they said she's not a girl anymore. She shouldn't be trying these on. And I said, well, how old is she? And he said, well, she's 14. And I said, well, what do you mean she's not a girl? Well, the little girl in the green, go to the next slide, that's her daughter. She's 14 with a 2-year-old daughter already. Isn't that insane? But so I asked her story, and she, her mother died when she was about 8. And of course, the father couldn't be bothered to take care of them. And she had an older sister, but the sister was only about 13 or 14. And so when a guy came when she was 11 years old and offered to marry her, off she went. Yeah, so. And this was the men cooking for us when we had our retreat. And of course, since it was men, they bought a solar panel so they could play their boombox. And there's the finished church with the decorations up and the nice pews. Yeah.
Hard.
Yes, very. So that's some of the women, and I'll show the rest of those when we. Now what's her name? Bibian, yes.
Beautiful dress.
She came and did one of the services. Isn't that the cutest? One of the workers dancing on the rooftop. Couldn't get him to sing though.
Again or no?
No. And then, yeah, we will. Just, okay, where's the cursor? There it is.
Oh, you're looking for those orange things.
Yeah, this is so cute. They start the kids yelling. He caught me filming him, so I stopped, but he started getting them out. Tankies we gave them. So then we went back to Lusaka for one night. If you pull over to the side of the road, you get swarmed by everybody who's trying to sell stuff at the side of the road. Next one. Okay, so I thought we'd try and show you some potholes. If you see right above the dashboard, it looks like there was a culvert there, and then they just pulled it out. But it doesn't look that big, but it's big enough that if you go in two wheels first, you're stuck. So you have to go one wheel, another wheel, another wheel, another wheel. It was kind of impossible to sleep when he was driving. Oh, and then the other thing is, like you're driving down the road and there's a school in the bush, but there's no sign that says there's a school. But they have 3 sets of 5 speed bumps before the driveway and 3 sets afterwards. And if you take your eyes off the road, you don't see these speed bumps. You hit them at like 100 kilometers an hour. And our taxi driver's going, sorry. And then he has just enough time to slam on the brakes before the next 3 set on the other one. It was just like, whoa. Yeah, it was kind of hard to sleep there in the next one. And yeah, there was some pretty bad ones, and then you've got these huge trucks going. That was one. They just dumped it was about 6 feet deep, and they just dumped it full of rocks. So, and the way people ride around there, you can't see her. She had a little baby in her arms. They have nothing to hang on to. They're just sit in the back of these trucks. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll look that way. And they really overfill these trucks, and they catch them and find them, but they just do it anyway. All right, look at that, KFC. Shot of home, but it really confused them. They had no idea what to do with the drive-through. Oh, really? Yeah, they just couldn't get it. We got those. Okay, forget it. I had some pictures, moving pictures of the Virginia Falls, but you know what? It's Victoria Falls, sorry, but it's so hard to get good pictures when you're up close because we did the whole experience. We didn't rent the raincoat or anything. We just went out there, and you start at one end and you walk all the way around because it's a long one, and by the time you get halfway there, you're just basically in a rainstorm because the mist is just flying off of the falls. Let me take the next. And this is the gorge. It's almost like a miniature Grand Canyon. It's really gorgeous. And then this, yeah, there's people, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a zip line across it. There's mental people in all countries. So we were on the Zambezi River, and that looks like clouds, but it's not. That's all the mist coming off the falls falling. It goes that high into the air, and there's another shot from a bit further away. So yeah, it was quite the view. So then we were off to Zambia, where we had the retreat, our women's retreat, and there's these rock formations all over the place. They're just like these multi-ton rocks are just bounced up there. It's a leftover from the Ice Age or something. It's just really something to see. So they had a really nice retreat for us. Yeah.
The place is called Taproot, which means balancing.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, that was quite a story. This is the eating place. It's wide open. It was really quite nice. And before we went to Victoria Falls, we counted up how much money we had left after paying for the women's retreat and giving the money to Keoma's. And then we texted the minister in Malawi because we'd heard that only 2 people were coming. That's all who could afford it. And so we texted her and we said, we have this much money. Can you find somebody who can come to the retreat? So she went to the furthest villages away and picked these 3 young ladies and paid for them completely. And then there was about another, 10, that could afford the $100 to come, but they couldn't afford the traveling money. So they ended up with 13 more people, women from Malawi coming that we paid for. So, yeah, that's a very poor area. We transferred them $700 US, and it came to how many millions? Yeah, the inflation is just insane. Oh yes, and then we had a Canadian morning where I cooked breakfast, and that was me attempting to teach the cooks how to make pancakes. So we had some best friends after that because we left them we taught them how to do it, and they cooked themselves some the next day, and then we left them the leftover maple syrup. Here's a couple signs that you won't see in Canada.
Yeah.
How about this one?
Are dangerous.
Yeah. Do not disturb them. People throwing objects in this area will be asked to retrieve them. Oh. And then as we were leaving, we met up with Tammy again at the airport, and so we had our last red cappuccinos before we left Africa. So thanks.
Thanks, that's it?
Yes, for the slideshow. So it was quite interesting staying with somebody who lives there, because you get their take on the things that have happened there. The people we stayed with in Zimbabwe, he immigrated there when he was 7 from Cyprus, and he's lived there since then, and they're in their 40s, I guess, eh? And to hear their version of things, like what you hear in the news is nowhere near the truth, right? And he says, white people are so gullible. I'm going, you're white. He goes, yeah, but he says, people write things about Africa and you believe it. He says, remember that article last year about Cecil the lion that got shot? Do you remember what a big deal they made out of that? He says, that guy probably paid $100,000 for his license and for everything to do it. And he says, and they name all the lions so they can tell them apart. And sometimes they're on reserves and sometimes they're not. He says, and poor Cecil wasn't on the reserve that day, and so he got shot. And they made such a big deal out of it. He says, but you know what? I've never read an article in the newspaper about what the Chinese are doing to the elephants. And I said, okay, I bite. What are the Chinese doing to the elephants? And he said, they're exporting the babies like crazy. There's a huge Chinese element there right now. They've moved in and they're buying up land and building things. And the only way you can get a baby elephant away from its mother is to kill the mother. So they'll find a herd, they shoot any animal over 10 years old, and then export all the younger ones to China. Well, elephants take 3 years to have a baby. It's a 3-year pregnancy. There's no way they're going to replace all those animals. He says that in 10 years that the rhinos will be extinct, and another 10 years after, he said the elephants will be gone. Because again, the Africans don't think ahead, and nobody's stopping the Chinese from doing this because the Chinese are coming in with all this money. And he was talking about the rhinos, how to save the rhinos, they would cut off the horns because that's the only part they use, right? And it's just matted hair, so it doesn't hurt the rhinos to cut them off. And they cut the horns off the rhinos, and it would make the poachers mad, so they'd kill the animal anyway. So it's just insane. And then he was talking about, you know, in the, what was it, 2000, when they kicked the white farmers out, right? And he's talking about what happened is that these people moved into the farms. He says, first of all, you had to understand how the white people farmed. They hired 300 families to work on their farm. He says, not people, families. So they would build them villages to live in. They would build schools so the kids would have an education. And they built clinics so they'd have good health care. And when they reappropriated all this land, some black people would come in and they'd kick out the white people or kill some of them, and they would take over the farm. But they didn't want any other black people living on their land, so they would kick out this whole villages of people. And then they would sit there. And so when we were in Kapiri, another couple came to visit, Shane and Mike, and they were talking, and he said, yeah, he says, I ran into one of the black people who took over one of the farms, and I said, well, what are you growing? And he says, I don't have to grow anything. He says, I have the best firewood around. And he chopped down every tree on that farm, all the macadamia nuts, the cashew nuts, all the fruit trees, and sold the wood as firewood. And then 2-3 years later, when there wasn't a tree left on the place, he just sat there. And he said, what most people don't realize is that Mugabe sent in all the local people to take over the farms, and 3-4 years later, when things had settled down, he just moved in and took them all over, and gave them as gifts to all the people in the government. Like, Mugabe owns like 28 farms. He has 500,000 acres of land that sits there. All he has is armed guards on there so people can't get on the farm. So I'm a bit of a skeptic, so I looked this up. And sure enough, in the late 1970s, the farming accounted for 30% of the workforce and 40% of exports. They exported tobacco, beef, sugar, cotton, and maize. And now they have no food. They have to import all their food, and a quarter of the people now rely on food aid. And we went shopping with Angie, and a pound of butter costs up to $18 US. It's kind of insane. Yeah, she's not giving it up. And she said, and this is, in the last year, the food prices, what did she say, tripled? So it's just kind of insane. And you know what the really dumb thing is? In February, South Africa voted to kick out all the white farmers. They haven't learned anything. Nobody learns from history, eh? So like the thieving and all the stuff that goes on is just insane. He used to own jewelry stores. He made jewelry, expensive stuff. He sold a ring to Mugabe's wife for $1.3 million. And after 5 months, when they asked for money, she decided not to pay them and took over some of their properties. But now that Mugabe is not in power anymore, they're filing lawsuits against her and getting some of it back. And now it turns out that she was one of the head ringmasters of the smuggling groups that was smuggling out the rhino horns and the elephant tusks. So, you know, it's just insane. He was telling us about the they had a real election for a change. Like when we were at the retreat, one of the women was saying, they don't have secret ballots like we have here. You go in, they ask who you vote for, and you have to say it out loud. And her son voted for the opposition, and so when he went outside, Mugabe's followers were there, and they broke his legs. Okay, so last year they actually had they wanted to get Mugabe out, and they had a real election. But then it took them 7 months to count ballots, okay? Because they kept bribing this guy, and finally they offered him enough money that he said, okay, I lost the election, and now Mugabe's right-hand man is in power. So they asked us, don't you have corruption in Canada? And we go, yeah, but it's not quite that blatant, you know? So how do you solve problems like that? You know, you can't. Only God can change the hearts of man, right? So one thing that struck me was how the villagers were content to just sit there and do nothing, because that's the way things were, and that's the way things have always been, and nothing's going to change. So why bother? Have we settled in our spiritual lives? That's just the way things are. That's just the way I am. I can't really change. Is there something in your life that you are pretending isn't a problem? Something that you think is no big deal, but it really is a big deal? An addiction you don't want to acknowledge because it's not that important. After all, it's just, what, shopping? Hours surfing the net? Buying too much fabric? Watching TV? Eating junk food? What are we using to satisfy our soul when only God can do that? You might see your hurts, habits, and hang-ups as biological or sociological. Some of them are from your circumstances. Some of them are from your chromosomes. But it doesn't really matter where they come from. You need to deal with them. Genetics may explain your inclinations, but it doesn't excuse your sin. Is there somebody up there? I've got a slide coming up. Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24 says, "Throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy." You're not going to change until your thoughts and attitudes change. It isn't going to happen automatically. You aren't just going to achieve change by accident in any category of your life. God tells us in 1 Peter 1, verse 14 through 16, "So you must live as God's obedient children. Don't slip back into your old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. You didn't know any better then. But now you must be holy in everything you do, just as God who chose you is holy. For the scripture says, 'You must be holy because I am holy.'" God told us to be holy. He wouldn't have said it if it wasn't possible. Holy means to be set apart for a noble use, to be devoted entirely to God or God's work. Pursuing holiness means God is the only one we should long for, want greatly, desire eagerly, the only one worthy of worship. I came across this prayer a couple weeks ago. This lady was tired of making New Year's resolutions that she never kept. And so she wrote this prayer. Unsettle me. These are the two words rattling about in my brain today. I almost wish it were a more glamorous prayer. Surely more eloquent words could be found for what I'm feeling led to pursue during this new year. But these are the words, and this is my prayer for the new year. The funny thing is, I've spent my whole existence trying to find a place to settle down, people to settle down with, and a spirit about me worthy of all this settled downness. All of this is good. A contented heart, thankful for its blessing, is a good way to settle. But there are areas of my life that have also settled in ways that mock my desire to be a godly woman. Compromises, if you will. Attitudes that I've wrapped in the lie, well, that's just how I am. And if that's all the bad that's in me, I'm doing pretty good. I dare you, dear soul of mine, to notice the stark evidence of a spirit that is tainted and a heart that must be placed under the microscope of God's word. Yes, indeed, unsettle me, Lord. Unearth that remnant of unforgiveness. Shake loose that justification for compromise. Reveal that broken shard of pride. Expose that tendency to distrust. Unsettle me in the best kind of way. For when I allow your touch to reach the deepest parts of me, dark and dingy and hidden away too long, suddenly a fresh wind of life twists and twirls and dances through my soul. I can delight in forgiveness and love more deeply. I can discover a discipline that lies just beyond what I'm capable of and grab hold of God's strength to bridge the gap. I can recognize the beauty of humility and crave the intimacy with God it unleashes. I can rest assured through harsh winds blow, I will be held. Goodbye to my remnants, my rationalizations, shards, and tendencies. This is not who I am, nor who I was created to be. Goodbye to shallow love, sharp words, self-pity, and suspicious fears. I am an unsettled woman who no longer wishes to take part in your distractions or destructions. Welcome deeper love, new possibilities, unleashed intimacy, and the certainty I am held. Welcome my unsettled heart. Welcome to the new year. Change in your life always requires new thinking. The battle to change the habits in your life is always a mental battle. It starts in the mind and it's won or lost there. You're not going to change until you choose to change. There is no growth in your life without change, and there is no change without loss. You've got to let go of old stuff. We're always just one choice away from reversing all the progress we have made. Victory isn't a place we arrive and then settle and relax. We have to maintain our victory with each next choice we make. A lot of times we think we're waiting on God to change us, but God is waiting on you. How are you going to be different in 6 months? Are you going to be emotionally stronger? Are you going to be mentally sharper? Are you going to be physically healthier? Are you going to be spiritually deeper? We have resurrection power living on the inside. Are we using it? Are we willing to be unsettled, to stop justifying our actions to ourselves and really pursue holiness? Let's pray. Father, thank you very much for this beautiful world you've created, Father, and there's so much variety, not only in the land, but in the people that you've made. And Father, you love each and every one of us, and you want us all to be in your family. And Father, you never give up on us, and you're always there for us. And it doesn't matter how far we wander, when we turn around, you're waiting there for us. And Father, thank you for this love and this commitment to us, and help us to return that love, Father, and to live the way that you have made us to be. And we ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Christine, before you go away, the voice from above. We joked around before we left that everybody would pray for me because I had to travel with Christine. But I have to tell you, I have traveled with circumstances. Like I traveled with a friend to PEI once, and she was somebody that said, so you paid for lunch and I paid for ice cream, and then we went for coffee, and you actually owe me 16 cents. And she was serious. She didn't let it go. Like the next morning I gave her 16 cents and we moved on.
You owe me 26 cents.
Yeah. So at one point, I think Christine owed me like 7,000 kwacha because she couldn't take enough money out of the bank. So we laughed about that for like ever. We finally settled all that. But when we were in Amsterdam coming home, I said, do I owe you any money? Do you owe me any money? And she says, you know what, whatever, it's done. Like, because we didn't know, like, whatever. Because I had euros and I wanted to get rid of them, and that thing happens. But to commemorate our trip to Africa, I actually brought you back something, which, every time we opened bags, it was like, don't go into that bag. But this is for you.
A shitangi?
Yeah, a shitangi. So, take a picture of us. Oh, you look so wonderful. Yes, I wore my shitangi because
we actually really didn't know each other before we left, and so I figured either by the time we came back we'd really be good friends, or we couldn't stand each other. We had to spend 3.5 weeks.
Thank God for those 2 days in the safari lodge.
We didn't have to share a room.
Oh, it's just it's a 2-meter piece of material that all the ladies wear because they're not allowed to show their knees. So.
Oh, wow. Elaine.
So there it is. Oh, we've got thousands of it. Of this. My first trip to Africa, I found one of these and it hangs in my bedroom. And I thought you could put this in your newly renovated office.
Oh, yeah, the one that's still not done.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one. We got updates every day of how this office was going.
You're welcome. I think we're friends. I'm not sure.
I have to tell you one funny story that happened, though. We were at the airport in Victoria Falls, flying to Harare, and I looked at her and I said, watch and learn. And she's like, learn what? So I go up to the counter and I hand the guy my passport, and he is saying, now, let me just go back one step. When you fly from Canada to Africa, you can take 3 50-pound bags with you.
If you have a missionary letter.
Because we were on a missionary letter trip. But flying within the country, of course, you can't do that. So he's like, this is going to cost you like $150 for each bag just to go to Harare. I said, yeah, I know. So here's the deal. You can either charge that to my MasterCard or you can take this $100 American bill. Stamp, 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 stamp. Luggage went through. He said, come with me. He walked us to the gate past everybody. Yeah, we didn't even have to go through security. Walked around security. We got to the plane, walked past first class, everybody else waiting, got us on the plane, we sat down, and Christine said, what just happened? I said, well, let me show you. He knew by looking at my passport, because he said to me, you've been here many times. I said, yes, and I know how this works. So,
the $100 went into his pocket.
In a country that has no money at the moment, so that was a big deal.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that. That is so bizarre. Zimbabwe has no money. You can line up, but you're only allowed to take out, what is it,
$50 US
once a week.
If they have it.
If they have it. Like the banks have no money, so you go to get money and you can't get anything, right? And so so they're back to the barter system, which works in the country, but in the city, one of the bankers came up with this idea, and it's called EcoCash. So what you do is you open up an account, and you can transfer some of your money in your bank to this, and you pay with your cell phone wherever you go. So you go into the restaurant and you order your food. When you give them the bill, they give you their EcoCash number, and you transfer the money to them. And when we went to the market, it was so dead. I mean, they have one of the 7 wonders of the world there, but the tourism is just terrible because
there's no money.
There's no money. There's nothing, you can't trust people. And so we went to the market, and they were just so happy there were white people that were going to spend money, And then their internet didn't work, and we couldn't transfer the money. And they crossed their fingers and wrote their information down and just hoped that we'd pay for them when the internet went back up.
But we couldn't have EcoCash. So my friend actually paid for our whole time while we were in Harare, and we just gave them the US cash. Because they have a false bottom closet where they keep all their money, because you can't put it in the bank because it's no guarantee it'll be there.
It disappears, yeah.
It's weird.
So it's quite
the
system.
On one day, my friend says to me, hey, we got to be careful what we do today, because I only got about 100 EcoCash dollars. But then her phone went ding, and one of their people paid their rent, so she said, oh, now I have like 4,500, so we can do anything today. So off we went, and she just paid for everything. It's like, oh my gosh. All right, well, the adventures.